Yeah, thank you all for being here. It has been a difficult week in America. We've addressed it many times at all the vigils around the country, that we have to acknowledge the emotion that's been involved. We live in unprecedented times in that, an assassination, an unspeakable crime, a murder like this is covered in real time online, where everyone, even young people, could see the images. And it's spurred on quite a mix of emotions around the country. It's shaken the nation. I think everybody can recognize that. A combination of grief and sadness, people feeling just overwhelmed by that, the trauma of it, and then the anger that comes naturally in our human emotion from that, and even fear. I've described it as feeling very much like a dark shadow was cast across the country, and certainly even on Capitol Hill. And so you've had members and elected officials having lots of discussion about this and concern, and many have been unified by that. But I just wanted to point out, and I have every time I've spoken on this issue, that our friend Charlie, and he was a friend to so many of us, would not want us to be stuck in that grief. He would not want us to be overcome by despair. Instead, he would want everyone to go out and be happy warriors as he was, to honor his memory by doing what Charlie did, and that is encouraging the free exchange of ideas, the free marketplace of ideas, by preaching the truth, but doing that in a loving way, by loving others. And that's what Charlie was marked by. That's how he described himself, and that's what his actions prove, that he was a Christ follower. He followed the teachings of Jesus himself, and not a perfect man, because no one is. But Charlie lived out those principles as well as anybody that we know. And so the outpouring of support is unlike anything we've seen. And it's been mentioned, but after his passing, interest in Turning Point USA is literally off the charts. And by last count, I think there are over 32,000 inquiries of new chapters to be begun of Turning Point USA on college and high school campuses, university campuses around America. They already had, I think, roughly 3,500 of them. And now this organization will grow exponentially more, and his voice and his legacy will be heard far wider than even that they were before. We're so encouraged by the strength of his dear widow, Erica, and the children. We pray for them. The nation does. I joined vigils, I think 3 in the last few days. We had one Friday night in Baton Rouge at LSU before the first weekend, first home SEC football game for our alma mater down there. It was a standing room only event. We had all those college students show up, and it was so encouraging to me to see their attitude about it. While they were mourning, they were also encouraged to be emboldened and to go forward and to share what Charlie had taught so many of them. The line for our vigil at the Kennedy Center on Sunday night wrapped around the building multiple times. There's so much interest in this. And our bipartisan vigil here in the Capitol last night was a worthy tribute to a man who meant so much to so many in this building. But the tragedy has also initiated a number of uncomfortable but necessary conversations about important issues like the safety and security of our members and the responsibility of public servants, and the need for political leaders to turn down the temperature and the violent rhetoric in America. It's not helpful. Government leaders, and this body in particular, have an increasing tendency to frame simple policy disputes as some sort of existential threat to our country, or as causes to, as some of them have said in their own words, take into the streets. That's not helpful. That is not productive, and it leads to bad consequences. Leaders cannot call their political opponents Nazis and fascists and enemies of the state because they disagree with their policy priorities. I mean, this is something we should have learned in grade school. This type of language spurs on depraved people, deranged people who take that as a cue. And this tragic phenomenon played out this week in Utah. Whether it's in politics, government, media, or business, people look to leaders for guidance, and we have to walk in the dignity of our office, as I say all the time. And when ostensibly serious representatives compare their ideological opponents to murderous dictators and evil people, some see that as a cue to act, and we have to stop that. The political violence has been decried, and it should be across the board. And we got to continue calling it out, and we will until it does. Let me talk about the issues on the floor this week. The D.C. crime bills has been referenced, And because we understand that solving this nationwide violent crime problem is critically important, it's a priority for President Trump as it is for congressional Republicans. So crime is something that touches everybody, and we all know somebody who's been carjacked or had a wallet stolen at gunpoint or was mugged, and it's happened to members of Congress in our nation's capital, and we have to stop it. Stopping violent crime is something that virtually every American agrees on. It's an 80-20 or 90-10 issue in this country. So this week, House Republicans are going to build on President Trump's wildly successful crackdown on crime here in the Capitol with 4 D.C.-specific bills that we believe can serve as a model for other municipalities around the country. Here they are very quickly. First, the D.C. Crimes Act. That would prohibit the left-wing D.C. Council from enacting lenient sentencing reforms and ensure juvenile offenders are charged as adults for serious crimes. Juvenile crime in D.C. is more than double the national average, or it was until the president stepped in here. The second bill is the D.C. Policing Protection Act, which restores law enforcement's ability to pursue fleeing suspects. It seems common sense, but it's been prohibited in some of these municipalities. We've all seen the hordes of ATVs and dirt bikes barreling through residential streets, and that's going to stop now. The third bill is the D.C. Juvenile Sentencing Reform Act. Reduces the age for juveniles to be tried as adults from 16 down to 14. Some of these crimes are so heinous that's necessary. And this is for certain violent offenses like murder, first-degree sex abuse, first-degree burglary, and armed robbery. The fourth bill is the D.C. Judicial Nominations Reform Act, which returns judicial appointments in D.C. to the President and the Senate in line with the Constitution. Left-wing activist judges are part of the problem, and they're not going to be allowed to return violent criminals to the streets anymore under the guise of restorative justice. We are restoring safety and order to the nation's capital, and we hope that other cities around the country follow this successful model. Let me address the necessity of keeping the government open. In the House, we have returned to regular order. We've been pressing this as a theme and a goal, and we have achieved that. We have made substantial progress on government funding this year. The House Appropriations Committee has passed all 12 bills out of committee. We have 3 passed off the floor already. We voted last week to begin a bipartisan conference committee with the Senate on 3 bills. That's Milcon, Ag, and Ledge Branch. And appropriators are actively engaged in ongoing bipartisan conversations to fund the government for FY26. So we have to allow time to do that because we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, as you all know. We need responsible options here to keep the government open while all this work continues. And Republicans are committed to making that happen. So here's what we'll do. We're going to release text here shortly, I think around noon, for a short-term, clean, continuing resolution that will keep the government funded and operating at current levels while we continue all this work and doing our jobs and getting the remaining bills done. Predictably and unfortunately, there are some Democrats who are openly pining for a government shutdown. In spite of this obvious and necessary step, they're grasping for straws as a party, and so some of them apparently believe that shutting down the government will be some sort of life raft for them so they can regain the support of the American people. I just think that is a fool's gambit. It's anybody who's advocating for that, it's to make it a partisan exercise is making a big mistake. In exchange for their vote to fund the government, some Democrats said they wanted Republicans to repeal our very popular and very effective reforms to the Medicaid program, where we cut fraud, waste, and abuse, and we ensured that illegal aliens don't receive taxpayer benefits, and we put able-bodied men back to work. They want us to wind that back. Zero chance that we will do that, because it's the right thing to do. And they're also demanding that we include unrelated health insurance tax credit provisions. That is a December policy issue, not a September funding issue. So this will not be a partisan CR. It will be a clean, short-term, continuing resolution, end of story. And it's interesting to me that some of the same Democrats who decried government shutdowns under President Biden appear to have no heartache whatsoever at walking our nation off that cliff right now. I hope they don't. I hope that they'll work with us so we can all do our jobs here. We get a short-term CR done, complete the appropriations bill, and get back to the regular order that we have all seen as necessary so we can be good stewards of taxpayers' funds.